Hello, this is John Speelman with the video version of my latest column, which I believe is number 221. And I started this a few minutes ago and then stopped and I'm restarting because I realised that I hadn't got a title. And after a little think, I've said, beware ferocious chess children. And basically, at the end, I've got a game by a 14-year-old boy who beat Ganguly, Surya Shekhar Ganguly, in the first round of Hoogeveen. And I also mention 9-year-old Ethan Pang, who lives, well, he's only about 20 minutes walk away from where I live, actually. And he's just reached 2,300 in the latest list, which is incredible. You know, very, very few kids at that age are that strong. And I've said that the moral is, so I'm starting at the beginning and I'll move back. The moral is to be jolly careful when you're playing children, and certainly not to rush against them. If you have to play boring chess and try to grind them down, that's absolutely fine. You know, the important thing is to be careful. Anyway, I started that in 1988, so this is 36 years ago, at the Brussels World Cup, I had a pretty awful game with John Nunn. And we had a post-mortem, and there was an elderly gentleman sitting by the post-mortem, and he was looking pretty discombobulated by our play, radiating, if not vexation, certainly surprised that these young people were playing so appallingly badly. And it turned out afterwards that this was Mikhail Botvinnik himself. I don't think I ever met him. I don't think I ever spoke to him. I think that's the closest I came to him. Anyway, the patriarch had to endure our post-mortem, which I pretended that I had a position of some sort, and it clearly wasn't true. And we both knew, but I managed to get away with it against John. And I said that Botvinnik always tried to establish psychological dominance over his potential rivals when he first played them. It's very important to him. There's a game, I couldn't find it. One of the very strong players, where he swapped the queens very early on and went in some ending and ground them down. It was something like a Queen's Gambit, etc., but I can't remember. Maybe somebody will tell me. And instead I've got his first game of his match against Petrosian, the World Championship match. So Petrosian was by then already a World Championship challenger, but in the first game Petrosian was so nervous he'd never beaten Botvinnik that he lost horribly, like sort of a candidate's master. Or did he say... I'm not sure which way round they are. He was defeated by I can't see it at the moment. But it was... He played really awfully, Petrosian. At first category strength, not even candidate master, yeah. But then Petrosian beat him in the very famous game 5, where he got his king to g7 on move 40, his white king, and ripped black's, basically slowly ripped Botvinnik's head off. The king's placement on g7 was actually used, somebody had World Championship Chess or something like that as a subject in Mastermind, the quiz on British television. You have a specialist subject, and that was the subject, and there was a question, where was the king when this game was adjourned? I thought it was a slightly badly phrased question, because I knew the game, of course. I knew the king did go to g7, but I didn't know if it was in g7 or f7 or maybe even g8 at the exact moment it was adjourned. Indeed, it was g7. That would have been my guess, but somehow in what area of the board, but it would have been difficult for the question master, wouldn't it, to have been sure the answer was right otherwise. Anyway, so I've got that. The opening of game 1 of the match, the 63 match, was repeated actually a week or so ago in Andreikin against Ivanchuk. And Vasil Ivanchuk beat Andreikin. He beat Gukesh Andreikin. Then he lost to Erigaisi, and then he also lost to Ivanchuk in the European Club Cup. Anyway, I've got that game. Then I've got this game. This 14-year-old Schuricht beat Ganguly, basically slaughtering him in the dark squares. And then I mentioned Ethan Peng, though I've only just added that now, so I haven't got one of his games. I'll maybe think about doing that in a month or so. I guess the next time that I see you, there will have been some games, quite a lot of the World Championship, won't there? And so I may have something to say about that. That'll be on December the 1st. Anyway, let's get on and look at these games now. So, it's down here, column number 221, and I'm starting with the game Nunn Speelman. I suppose we'll have it from my point of view, since it is my game. So knight d7 Caro, which is what I played almost invariably then. John played knight g5. This was just becoming trendy. I'd faced it first time against Eddie Gufeld, probably in Hastings 1986-7, and actually I just blithely played h6 at some moment, not realising that the sacrifice knight e6 was dangerous. I was so blithe that he believed me and retreated the knight, and we drew, but I was a bit lucky to get away with it. So I played that. It's okay. c5 is not okay. I mean, later they discovered that you're supposed to go knight on to, I mean, you can go, instead of e6, you could certainly go knight f6 first, probably better, I don't know. Does it matter? Maybe it doesn't matter very much. So here, knight gf6, knight f3, don't play h6, you go bishop d6, queen e2, h6, takes, queen takes. This is the main line. Black's got some problems, because he either has to move the knight now, in which case you lose control of the e5 square, or you have to realise that queen g4 may happen at some moment. The move queen c7 is often played. And then they used to go, they go like this. Then they always used to go queen g4, but then castles was discovered to be a good move. And this is the main line. Anyway, it's not, I mean, there's a lot of theory, which I know some of. The thing is that after b6, queen g4, you have to play king f8. And I've always said, I don't mind having to move my king to f8 in a position like this. You have quite a lot of control, it's not an unreasonable thing to do. But I do rather mind setting myself up on move 4 with knight d7 to have to move my king and not castle. I find it a bit difficult. I don't often play knight d7 anymore, if at all. Anyway, I played c5, which is not a great move. John went there, I took. He just castled. And this is pretty dangerous. And I took, which can't be a great move. I mean, the whole game is pretty horrible. Now the engine wants to go here, a5, queen c5, and then the fine move rook a4. And basically white has all his pieces out, and it's a pretty miserable position. Really is. He's going to go rook takes d4, maybe he'll lose the a5 pawn, but then he'll be attacking with all 5 of his pieces, or certainly 4 on the rook and e1, and it will not, I'm very likely not to be long for this world. I would say, there's too much attack, I don't have any development or anything. Anyway, on we chundered. Remember, we're just making this up. John took his pawn back, which was nice. Now, I said about queen takes b2. Normally I try not to steal pawns like this, but sometimes you have to get something for your money to have a chance. He went rook b3, queen to there. He went bishop b6. I didn't take, I just went rook e8. And now apparently rook g3 is a really strong move. That's not so obvious. It's obvious it might be a strong move, but whether it is not so clear. And the engine is going on takes, 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 takes here. Takes, takes, takes. And basically king takes check here and just h4. And black's all over the place. I mean, I don't have any development, do I? Essentially. So I have every chance of being checkmated in a few more moves. However, I mean, it wouldn't be that easy to determine at the board. You know, you'd worry that there was some way for black somehow to defend himself. Remember, computers don't have that worry because they can calculate everything. He went rook b5, I went back. And now I'm starting to get to a position. I took and I went there and offered a draw. And I have actually got past the worst of it. I've done jolly well to be alive at all, really, in my opinion. I think that's a perfectly reasonable claim, that you're doing well to be alive. And in fact, John agreed the draw here. So a pretty awful game. You can see that the patriarch, that the steam coming out of his ears was well justified. So this is game one, Petrosian against Botvinnik. I've annotated it here before. I'll just quickly go through. So knight e2 is supposed to go knight f4, but you just play rook e8 and set up the half pin on the e-file, so knight f4 is illegal. And I think this was probably enough to upset Petrosian, actually. I think he was very vulnerable at this moment, and this was enough to upset him. So he really didn't play very well. But no, f3 is a pretty ugly move, weakening things. There are a few moves that really are disgusting. This move is disgusting. It's not a move that Petrosian... Maybe you need to make it, but it's not a move that Petrosian... He'd find some way not to. Try very hard not to, anyway. It's so weakening of the dark squares. I think, yeah, apparently knight g5 is better. All right. Doesn't matter. At some point... Petrosian was so upset that he actually... Oh, he went back again. He's really winding him up, isn't he? Really enjoying it, Botvinnik, this thing. Now the horrible move, some move he plays the disgusting move g4. That's horrible. It's all over the place here. Something terrible happened in a minute. c5, he starts to break it up. If bishop takes, just rook b8. But I mean, you know, you have to do something. Back, actually. I mean, okay, yeah. Otherwise, you just put the knight in somewhere. And this position is obviously lost. And in fact, he'll add rook e2 check. So an absolutely abysmal game by one of the best players of all time, in which his nerves completely overcame him. Right, but he did fight back. The first thing he did, which I think discombobulated Botvinnik. Yeah, I should say, I've said before here, but my first ever serious chess book was Bob Wade's book on the 1963 match. And no, very interesting. I mean, more interesting to me now, of course, than it was when I was a sprog, but still, maybe my first chess book of all was Chess for Children, I think, actually. By Bottom Morrison, which is very good. And I learnt to read with, actually, because I quite learned to read properly. Because it turned out to be a useful thing to be able to do. Okay, so the fifth game... What Petrosian did is he just played chess when Botvinnik was white against him. He didn't get upset. He defended himself normally, just made some draws, said, all right, I've lost the game. It's a 24-game match as it was then. Tough, I'm going to play. Then this is what happened in game 5. So, apparently Petrosian told his second, or was this second Bondarevsky or Boleslavsky? He told whichever it was that if he reached this position, it was Boleslavsky, that if he reached this position he'd win the game. Obviously got a slightly better pawn structure. The thing is, black has some development, but you can go knight to there and you have this beautiful, beautiful square on e4 for your horse. And he's not done it particularly well. I think the fact he has to lose a tempo is annoying. Rook to there. That wasn't particularly bright, I think, because now knight a2 is very bad. Something very bad happens here. Rook b7 here? Yeah, plus over line. Somewhere around here, he's just playing his moves. What did he do? Rook c1. b7. It's given as a question mark. It's not my annotation, I think. Or maybe it is, maybe the engine. Oh, it allows b4, does it? The pawn now gets artificially isolated. I'm going to carry on for a bit because there are quite a lot of moments where Botvinnik could certainly have fought really hard. One problem he had, I mean, obviously I've suggested later on in the column that it's good to play quietly and viciously against children, but sometimes they can do it themselves. And Petrosian, of course, wasn't a child at this stage at all. I don't know if you can take here, maybe. Might have been a good idea. It's not good, is it? Not at all a good position. Yeah, oh, he could, that's right, he could have gone rook d2 first. He could have gone rook d2, king b3, and then gone rook d1. I mean, there's a threat of rook takes rook here, and knight takes pawn. But you can do this, and the king is in a less good square. So Botvinnik was playing pretty abysmally this game, really. Maybe he wanted this to happen anyway. Nice move, just to return, not giving black any counterplay. So if the king had been on b3, or maybe you have rook to the 7th check. If maybe he actually wanted that because he thought that if the king was in b3, there'd be some rook to the 7th check thing. Okay, I don't know. Threatening to come in, threatening to the rook to the 7th. Famous game. Of course, you can't go rook h5 because of knight f6 check. And this was the adjourned position, was it? Rook c6, rook h1. So this was the adjourned position with the king on g7. Beautiful position for white, and he won quite easily. I mean, black tried to get some play. Yeah, if you take knight to there, wins immediately, and knight d5. Gets to there as well. And here he resigned. And, I mean, you could play it on a little bit, but it's really very bad. King to there, h6, for instance, knight to there, there. And you fix the pawns, and that's the end of that. You obviously mustn't let him get it past h pawn. Okay. Maybe did something. Okay, that's 2 games. Then I've got Andreikin, Ivanchuk, and the point of this is that they reach the same position. Same position as in... Oh, I think Ivanchuk would certainly have known that. I'm assuming. so this Andreikin's done okay here. Now he gets a bit overexcited. He plays g4. It's the move you want to play. I suppose he doesn't have anything if he doesn't do it, but it's not particularly wonderful. I mean, I presume you could castle kingside and it wouldn't be terrible. You have played h3, which is a bit weakening. But, okay, he does this. And, I mean, the engines don't like knight h6, but what are you going to do if you don't do it? You have to do something about the position, so I don't mind him doing this. It's just that maybe you could go, I don't know, rook g3 or something, or try to be a bit more. Maybe rook g3 can go h2 and knight f5 or something, I don't know. I assume it doesn't really work if black can get in, somehow get his rook over to h8 or something. But king g7, there will be knight h5 check at the moment. Anyway, I don't know, he decided to sacrifice. It's a fairly rational thing to do. Actually, pawn takes pawn, the engine likes, but I mean, queen e6 is not stupid. You can see that the blast, the dictation software has given me a capital W here. Curses be unto it. Doesn't really matter, does it? But I just don't know why I'm doing that. And yeah, you force an ending, and you put your pawn on the 7th. Presumably you're winning. I mean, it's certainly saying plus minus the great stuff. I presume you have time to set up a passed d pawn as well, or you got, so you got the outside pawn anyway. But I mean, this is given as winning. But I can see why Chucky wouldn't have been that sure. So what's happened? She can't play rook f3 because of knight d2 check or queen takes rook. He actually manages to get a little bit of play. Does quite well, really. So he's fighting a little bit. And he even gets this in, but the problem is now the queen to there. If you take the knight, take rook to there, nothing better to do. And you cannot get control of the relevant sector, to wit G1, and therefore you're completely stuffed, absolutely stuffed, and there's no sacrifice of any sort for white. So that would be hopeless. So he actually got this in. No, you got the queens off. Yeah, if e7 you just go here. Put white into Zugzwang. I think I'd have just played rook e2 and pushed the d pawn. Push the d pawn until white has to take it, and then taking his e7 pawn. But he, of course, you can win any way you like. He actually went here, here, here. And here, there was nothing particularly better than this. But of course it's winning. And he resigned. This ending, if the black king could be forced away from the pawns, or if it was still cut off from the pawns, there would be some very, very slight interest in this ending. Excuse me, but with the king in the midst of the pawns, it's completely uninteresting, totally winning. And then I've got one more, haven't I? I've got this game where Ganguly played this kid. So he's playing his opening, doing his stuff, reasonably happy. Goes rook g1, that's the sort of move they play nowadays. Much more a 21st century move than a 20th century move, in my opinion. And interestingly, black goes h4. I must say, I think that's quite quite macho, really. I'm quite impressed by black doing that. You can't take with the c pawn. You have to take this way. Now white gets an f5 square, but it's not clear it matters very much. I mean, the engine actually wants to go c5, knight f5, bishop f8. And now queen takes is dangerous, but you just play take on passant. Now you've got to take, I think, and without a g5 hit coming as well. And now even rook h3 is given, though I must say I would be tremendously loath to play rook h3 there and give white a tempo, though I might decide it was alright, I suppose. This is not very good, is it? Yawning while I'm doing this, but I apologise humbly, and there we are, as in the magic roundabout. And okay, so bishop e4, and he should have gone bishop takes, pawn takes, rook c8, leaves white with a disgusting pawn structure. No, I can't be bothered to do this capital L. I also wondered about castles, dc5, rook e8, yeah. Queen d3. White's position is clearly a mess, and actually Stockfish itself says it's minus plus, which is a surprise to me. I would have thought it was better for black, but still a game. However, that's what the great engine says. They carried on. I think bishop takes knight wasn't too bad at this point. Bishop takes. That's maybe a mistake. It's bishop c6 better, I think. Knight d4. And here, okay, you want to play knight f5, and he just takes it. You don't take the queen, but you take the bishop, and he takes, and you castle. And this is really not a position you want to have against anybody, especially a keen young player, because it's clearly fun to play for black. Actually, white can play knight at queen e5 here, and he should have done. I mean, he should have tried to bail out. Probably have gone takes. I think he'd go knight d3 check. I think I would. And this is about equal, probably. And, you know, you could play this position perfectly happily as black, but also as white, and the game would continue. And that would have been a sensible way to play, I think. Whereas g4 is a bit mad. Takes. I kept on trying to make sort of g5 work, for instance, but here, knight, and if queen takes, knight checks, takes is just the end of the game. Absolutely nothing to do here but queen c1 check. So, I mean, there are various lines. I've given them. I was analysing with somebody in a lesson, and we were faffing around, and I wasn't trying that hard to be accurate, just trying to get an idea. Anyway, he played d3. This is a good move. He played very well, the kid roundabout here. Good move. This is an excellent move. Smashing open the lines. Get the pawns good, but it's even more important to do this. You need to keep the bishop protected. If rook takes, check, and then king takes pawn, rook e8 check. The bishop falls on d1. I mean, the engine I had said not king f3 exclam, and was very proud to merely have lost a queen. But I mean, there we are. Probably gave a question mark king f2, but this is obviously this is winning. He did this very well, actually. And then finally, the last move of the game, which is just bishop b3, threatening queen h1 check. Absolutely no defence against queen h1 check, and queen takes rook would check and splat. If you could play queen takes d5, then you might have had some sort of chance to defend. I'm not sure, because then you'd be defending the rook along the diagonal. But of course, going something like rook b2 or queen c2, you still lose the rook would check on g2 and probably get mated a couple of moves later. So, basically that's it. These 5 games, quite a lot of games, and beware of sprogs, or children. Be careful when playing them, because they are very dangerous nowadays, and some of them are exceptionally good. I mean, the kid who I gave this game from gained 100 rating points a month ago and has gained 115 rating points from Hoogeveen, so he'll be over 2300. But he is 14, whereas Ethan Pang is 9, which is just crazy. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will be back on December the 1st for the next column. Right, I'm going to check again that we're recording, otherwise I'll screen to myself, and we are, and see you next month.